Okay, it is time for the NCAA tournament. We're doing this the podcast this week or this episode partially from Cleveland, the home that LeBron James built. Uh, and I would love to show you the rest of the arena, which is behind me, but the concourse is probably the only quiet-ish area in this building because the teams come out and they're practicing. Right, like right now, I believe Bryant is down there working out and the band is so loud and then they have the overhead music. It's not friendly for a podcast with these little microphones. So that's why I'm doing it from the concession area right behind. It's almost like the Star Center when we were at the Star Center for the state
Yeah.
basketball tournament.
Except we're not 20 feet away, and you're not in my line of sight.
Right.
and you ruined my trivia question. I was gonna see if our viewers could figure out which one of us was in Cleveland and which one of us is in the living room of his house.
Yeah, I could show you that. I'm looking out. They have floor to ceiling windows. I'm looking out at the Cleveland gray sky, which is the typical mistake by the lake weather. And you nailed it, though, bro.
Isn't that their feature? Gray skies.
I landed last night. I didn't get to the airport until about midnight here in Cleveland, and it was 60 degrees and just beautiful, perfect weather. I woke up this morning and it was raining and cold and miserable.
Yep. And get ready for that if the Lobos make it through 4 days, you're going to be experiencing that for all four.
Yeah. Yeah, this is you and I have both covered this tournament, James, in the past, and to me, I think the best day is the day before they play because you get to go to all the press conferences, you get to really get to know the coaches and the athletes, and then you get to watch them work out. It's really for the most part in an empty building because they have these things in NBA facilities for the most part, and there's just not a lot of people that come to it. So it's kind of this real intimate, very quick turnover kind of feeling to it, and look. The games are fun and exciting, but this to me, I'd much rather take the day before than the actual day.
No, there you go. I mean, it'd be kind of cool if the NMA ever did that with high school basketball and just let the teams play on the on the court the day before if they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, so I spent most of my day sitting through some of these press conferences, and I'll tell you right now, like I've interviewed Pitino about 9 million times this year. So after a while, you just run out of things to talk about. Like what's your favorite tree and why? That sort of stuff. But you get here, and the last name of the Lobos head coach is the conversation point for so many people. The first question out of the Akron Beacon Journal beat writer today was about his dad. And you can tell he'll handle those questions pretty well. But from the local media, from us, he wants nothing to do with that.
Yes.
He's answered those questions a ton. But for the out of town media, he's kind of gracious about it and he's accommodating. But yeah, if I were to ask that question, he would just sit there and stare at me like his son does every time I.
Yeah, like who wants to know, right?
Yeah. But to me, the fun part, like I told you guys before we came on, Tom Izzo is about to do his press conference, which is about 20 minutes before as we're doing this. He is by far the biggest celebrity in this building. So everyone is super. Even there's like a buzz in the media room about going to watch Tom Izzo speak. And who knows? I mean, he could give you a recipe about spaghetti noodles or something, and it would just captivate the entire media. So he was really good. Shaka Smart, talked to him a little bit about, and we're going to run this story in our Friday newspaper. But he and Richard Pitino have something of a symbiotic past. They both had ties to the Florida coaching staff when Shaka Smart coached at Florida under Billy Donovan as an assistant until 2009. And when he left, Richard Pitino took his spot on that staff. And then both of them have since gone on to bigger and better things, obviously. And I asked both of them about the role that Billy Donovan has played in their life. So in some ways, it was kind of nice for Pitino to talk about another coach that's not his dad. So that was pretty good. But, yeah, a lot of cool storylines here. It's just it's one of these things that's just a lot of fun. It's exhausting, but it's a lot of fun.
I know a lot of people probably we want to get to the Lobos first, but I still got to ask: has your bracket been busted already?
Yeah. I picked Louisville. Of course, everyone's saying, "Well,
so did I." Did I.
Because Louisville's they finished the season ranked number 10 in the Associated.
Yeah, they won 20 out of 21 of their last 23 games. They were on a roll.
Yeah. So of course I drank the Kool-Aid for Louisville. I had Louisville going to the Elite Eight and all my brackets.
I wasn't that bad. I had them to the Sweet 16, but not to the Elite Eight.
Well, how far do you have the Mountain West teams going?
I think the furthest I got is UNM getting to the second round. That's it. I don't think I had anybody getting past the first round. Not Utah State, obviously not San Diego State since they're long gone now. Obviously in CSU, I know they're kind of they're one of the sexier picks in the 12-5, upset range, but I just don't see it happening. Even with Clifford. I know Clifford's getting a lot of love right now and his stock is rising, especially when it comes to the NBA draft prospects, but I just don't see CSU being able to pull that off.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they're red hot coming into the tournament. They're the flavor of the month. But remember, that's a team no one was talking about 2 weeks ago. Now all of a sudden,
and really, if they don't win the tournament, they're not in. Neither them or Boise. It would have been a 3-team conference.
Yeah, and they're the only 12 seed that's actually favored coming into the tournament. So there is that.
That's not wild.
Yeah. I know New Mexico is not a favorite, but it's like you and I have talked about. There are certain things to look out for UNM that kind of give you a reason for optimism. And one is that Marquette, they're not a very good low post defensive team. And Nelly Jr. Joseph, UNM center, is the only guy who played well in the tournament last year against Clemson. The Lobos just got manhandled by Clemson, but he played well. And the Lobos have made a conscious effort to have him be much more aggressive in the paint. They want him to demand the ball and not just go for layups, but to actually dunk and be a power guy. And so I think you'll see a lot of that. A lot of the Lobos offense early on is going to try to get him involved. And he's one of these guys who just avoided foul trouble all year. He's a big physical player, but he doesn't pick up a lot of fouls. So I think that could be a big thing for them. But yeah, I think UNM's got a puncher's chance. Now that I said that, it could turn into a North Carolina San Diego State game.
Exactly. Or it could be Clemson UNM from last year, where I think everybody thought the same thing. I mean, it's funny the parallels between Clemson and Marquette. They were 2 teams that were struggling toward the end of the year. They didn't look good, and UNM was coming off, a nice little run. Obviously, in the Mountain West tournament, they won it last year. This year, they were, they win the conference outright. But you just, everything's all about matchups and definitely about size. And I think for once, I mean, last year, I think we underestimated how big Clemson was, especially in their backcourt. And I think this year's Lobos team is much better at being able to play bigger teams in general.
Yeah, they look like a college team now. They're because last year you had 3 guys in the backcourt that were all 6'2", 6'3", or shorter.
Allegedly, you should say.
Yeah. Now they have length, but it's still kind of the same cast of characters that do most of the damage. But yeah, when the Lobos were doing a shoot around, True Washington was one of the first players on the floor. And I'm there trying to get shots for our Twitter account. And he kind of jogged up to me. He's like, "This is my time." Like, you know what? True, maybe it is. Maybe because this is your opportunity to go out and maybe guarding a second-team All-American guard tomorrow. Because he'll be the guy in Cam Jones for Marquette. And we'll see. It'll be a chance for True Washington to make a lot of NIL money if he can somehow pull off a good game.
Would you classify him as the X factor? I think we all know what Dent and Nelly will do, but to me, I think if True has a good game, that bodes well for the Lobos tomorrow.
True and Amseal, who's been really struggling. I know he's got plantar fasciitis, and I've had plantar fasciitis.
That's never fun to play through. Yeah.
Now that I'm getting up there in years, and I can tell you, there were days I just couldn't. It took me a good 10 minutes to start walking after I got out of bed. So
yeah, that's horrible, man.
I do feel his pain, literally. But if he can somehow not go 4 for 13 shooting the ball, I think that definitely helps, because he's a guy who's 6'10", low post, strong forward for UNM. But if he doesn't shoot the ball well, it really, really hurts their offense. So, yeah, I think you can expect Donovan Dent to get his 18 to 20 points. I think you can expect Nelly Jr. Joseph to get a double-double. But you cannot bank on Amseal and True Washington to do certain things. And if they can, that's a winnable game. But I thought the exact same thing about San Diego State when they were going against North Carolina the other night. And you're down by 17 points, and I'm thinking, well, yeah.
So much for that.
And then it's 24 points, and then it's 30, and then it's 40 points. Like, well, I don't know if they're going to win this game.
At that point, yeah. I think by the time you saw it get to 20, and having seen San Diego State a couple of times, you just knew offensively they didn't have the firepower to be able to get back into that unless their defense just really locked down. And Carolina just did not look like they were just gonna get cold at any point during that game.
Yeah, and I like how like last night I flew in. I didn't get to Cleveland until super late, but the first thing I did when I got to my hotel room was I turned on the NIT because the Mountain West has one team in the NIT, and of course it's San Jose State, which was 15-19, and they got an NIT bid. So go figure with that. And then so they wound up losing too, which is not a huge. It's not newsworthy, but I mean they lost, and so now the Mountain West is now 0-2 in the postseason.
I guess the big question then is, I guess San Diego State's the last team to have won a postseason game. Would that be accurate, or did the Mountain West have any teams that won in any of those other tournaments that nobody cares about?
Yeah, Colorado State won a game last year. They're playing game, and then Utah State did win their first round matchup last year. So the Mountain West had some semblance of success, but yeah, the one all New Mexico fans are going to remember is the Lobos flaming out against
Clemson after everybody got their hopes up. But that isn't that typical Lobo fans, Dan? They just overinflate their own team and they underestimate the other.
I just sit down and put pen to paper and try to come up with another school in the country that has the fan backing that UNM does, where you can draw 14,000 fans a night for years, for decades at a time. And your team has only won in its entire history 9 NCAA tournament games.
They've never 2 in a year. They've never won 2 in a year.
Never won 2 in a year. And then, of course, everyone talks about the 1977-78 team as maybe the worst loss ever because they were ranked number 3 in the country going into the postseason. They're one of the top seeds in their region. Lost to Cal State Fullerton. And Fullerton, if they win that game in Tucson, they come back to Albuquerque. Yeah. With a chance to go to the Final Four, and instead Fullerton comes here and plays for a chance to go to the Final Four, not the Lobos. So that to me, I think it's funny because that thing was almost 50 years ago, and that was the high water mark for UNM in the NCAA tournament.
Actually, if I remember off the top of my head, that's now 47 years ago. And ironically, the same day the Lobos lost to Fullerton, Santa Fe High won its only big school state title against Albuquerque High.
So that's the Demons' fault, then? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. If Santa Fe High hadn't won, none of this would have happened. The
Lenny Roybal jinx.
Yes. That's what they get for not hiring him after what he did at Santa Fe High.
You know what they should do is kind of like what they did with the Cubs reversal of the all that stuff.
Reverse the curse. Yeah.
They should throw some of his CDs in like a glass jar and blow it up somewhere. See if
let him have a concert before the first NCAA tournament game. There you go.
And then take all his musical equipment and smash it in front of him just to see if that breaks the jinx. We could do that.
You got to do something, man.
You and I can call Lenny and see if we can set that up. We'll make that our next podcast.
Anytime Lenny gets a chance to sing, he's going to say yes.
Yeah, you're right. I feel bad. He used to send me a copy of his music every year. He's still doing it.
Didn't he have one like about 5 years ago or something? I think I know it was the red and green chilies. His little love song to that. The state song or something like that he's trying to. I guess
we're dead to him now. Apparently.
Yeah, apparently so. Being a songwriter and a landlord, it just takes up too much time.
Right. Well, how far do you have the Lobos going realistically? Do you have them winning a game?
I honestly have them beating Marquette this game. I just think that Marquette just is not I don't think it's a good matchup for the Lobos. I mean, the Lobos are not a good matchup for Marquette, especially with the way Marquette's been playing recently. You've seen their struggles over the last 6 games, I think, or 12 games. I think they're 6-6.
Mm-hmm.
And they got knocked out in the second round of the Big East tournament and everything. So I just think that the Lobos are a different team than they were last year, and I think depth wise they're a lot better. I think we kind of saw that when Amstel got hurt, they were able to navigate through that. And I think if you run into issues of foul trouble with foul troubles or even a fluke injury that happens, I think they're better equipped to handle that than they were last year. And I just think Marquette just is a better matchup. They just don't have the same type of size and length that Clemson did to bother them.
Did you have a little bit of lunch come up right there? Is that what happened?
Yeah, just a little bit, or either that, or it was the ghost of Lenny Roybal coming, is trying to speak through me there. So
Yeah. I think I'm on the same page with you. I think the Lobos could actually win tomorrow. I do like their chances. In Michigan State, potentially a second round matchup for UNM or the winner. Michigan State's one of these teams that either goes to the Final Four or they lose to Bryant, which is who they're playing tomorrow. And there's a couple of people down there. I was asking around. I've been just kind of going from practice to practice, and there's a lot of optimism. People think, you know what? I don't think Bryant's going to beat him, but I think Bryant could definitely push him. But we are talking about the essentially the Big Ten champion. I know they did not win their conference tournament, but they're the best team in the Big Ten. And when you talk about the Big Ten, you talk about big, strong, physical teams.
But Michigan State, I think, if memory serves, they were kind of the antithesis of that, and the antithesis of a typical Tom Izzo team. Tom Izzo likes to be big and physical and strong and play a more of a half-court game, but this team wants to get up and down. And a lot of times, as experience has shown, those teams that like to run and get out and play an up-tempo style, they have a hard time doing that in the NCAA tournament just because of the matchups. And if you run into a team that either can run with you or slow you down, you just run into issues, especially if a team gets hot.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the Cleveland bracket is you have St. Mary's playing against Vanderbilt tomorrow. They're in a different region, but Alabama is also here. Yep. And Alabama is the fastest paced team in the country. I think UNM was number 4 in terms of pace in the country at the end of the season. So you have two. Yeah, in that potential second-round matchup, you have Alabama, which wants to score 90, 95 points a game, as opposed to St. Mary's. They'd rather keep it in the 50s with their slow, methodical, grinding out pace. Right. And that's, I think, to me, in terms of the entirety of the first weekend of games across this entire tournament, that could be the most entertaining game you could find because it's just two opposing styles against two teams that everyone kind of feels is like a chic pick to make it to the Final Four. People are in love with St. Mary's just to the way they play defense and the way they shoot. And these guys come out, and every one of them is super well spoken. You think, now I understand why St. Mary's is good because they're all really good students. First of all, they seem super bright. But then Alabama came out, and we had a chance to watch Mark Sears as one of the best guards in the country. He's a first-team All-American guard. And thinking, yeah, I would not want to face that guy at all. Just even in shoot around, he looked like an All-American. Like, yikes, that guy's. And they got Alabama's just an enormous team. They've got huge size, length, muscle. So yeah, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, all those Southeast Conference schools. Before the Lobos ever get to a point where they maybe have to run into one of them, you hope somebody knocks one of them off because yeah.
Well, you always kind of wonder too. You see that in a lot of years where you see a team that gets a lot of bids and then they fall flat on their face. They kind of get exposed because either they didn't play as tough a non-conference schedule or they didn't get as big a wins as they should have. And then after beating each other up throughout the during the conference season, once they get to the tournament, you kind of run out of gas because you've played 25, 30 tough games and you really haven't had a break. And sometimes that's the worst thing that could happen is if you get into an ultra competitive conference where you don't really get that night off or a game where you don't have to bring your A game to be able to win. And I think in some ways with UNM and, even to a lesser extent, Utah State, you have that opportunity in the Mountain West where, you can run into an Air Force, or Fresno State, and it doesn't take your best to be able to get past them.
I love the analogy I got from one of the UNM people. I said, look, you spend an entire season rooting against and fighting against the Utah States, the San Diego States, the Boise States, the Colorado States, the Nevada.
And now you're rooting for them.
Yeah, now that you get into the tournament, like, what is the dynamic here? The protocol, does it demand that you root for them, that you kind of maybe have that symbiotic brotherhood of Mountain West, whatever? And one of the coaches I was talking to said, it's kind of like the movie Castaway. You love, you have this relationship with Wilson. You cultivate this thing over years, and you spend all this time together, and you love each other. You hate each other. He said, but at some point, you just got to let them go and do their own thing. And when you get to the postseason, you got to let Wilson float away. So the Wilsons of the world are Utah State, San Diego State. Like,
you just say bye-bye.
Yeah, good luck. I don't care if you win or lose. I'm just glad I'm done with you.
Exactly.
it's time for me to move on. So yeah, think of that when you're watching the Lobos tomorrow. They're Tom Hanks floating on the raft, clinging to life. They couldn't care less about the other Mountain West teams. It's just about them. So that's a weird analogy, but I was like, yeah, that's
it does kind of work, It's just out of sight, out of mind.
yeah. It should be fun. I'm glad the New Mexican had us represented out here, and of course, if they get to the Sweet 16, they go to Atlanta, and it could be all hands on deck. So that'd be a lot of fun. But hopefully, I think there's actually direct flights from Albuquerque to Atlanta. Should be easier.
Yeah. It's still going to cost you an arm and a leg to get there, though.
Yeah, but that trip yesterday was. I've never been to Cleveland, and descending into Cleveland weather over the lake was some scary stuff. Like, holy smokes, man!
I had an experience like that too when I went to New York City, where it's just cloud cover and everything around this time of year. As a matter of fact, like during spring, it was like in March. It was just until the last 50 feet, you didn't realize if you were coming in, you're coming into land.
Yeah, it's like, well, I hope we have airbags in this thing because it's getting nasty. But,
well, with the way airlines have been falling out of the sky lately, it's always I think it's like a 60-40 proposition. You're actually going to land.
Right. All right. With that, we are going to head off. I got to do the Tomo Izzo press conference, which now starts in 4 minutes, I believe.
Oh yeah. You better run, dude.
I got to run. There's I don't know if you noticed behind me. There's a bunch of Michigan State fans here. Michigan State might have the large. In fact, there's a huge group of them right down that way by the hamburger joint. They're all eating.
Are any of them former New Mexican employee John Luckel?
It could be. It could be. Yeah, they're all Michigan State fans. There's a ton of green-clad people down there ready to hate on somebody. So, yeah.
All righty, man. Well, we better let you go before you really have to run in there.
Yeah, right. But we'll be back next Tuesday. It should be an exciting tournament, and maybe hopefully your bracket isn't too busted like mine is.
And who knows? Maybe you'll have to do this again in Atlanta next Thursday.
We will see. We'll see about that. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see ya.